Welcome back to another episode of Just Some Perspective Podcasts. I'm your host, Mosh, and we have another health reaction for you today. Another Diary of CEO reaction. Great channel, one of the best in YouTube, and Stephen Bartlett is one of the most influential figures, to be honest, on social media. Period. Highly recommend this channel, and this one is for why 70% of men's overall health, is getting worse. And as a 36-year-old adult male, I can tell you that as we get older, it gets harder to maintain your health, even with diet and exercise and sleep. However, all those things are very necessary and important. But yeah, love to hear what they got to say, and I'll be chiming in here and there.
It is. It is. Why is it declining? And what? And is this? Does it matter?
Well, I think the second question is easier to answer than the first. I do think it matters.
They're talking about testosterone overall.
The why is probably multifactorial, and the why is just as important as the fact that it is. In other words, the fact that it's declining is both relevant for the fact that a very, very important hormone that has.
This is Dr. Peter Attia, also a great podcaster, actual doctor. I listen to his podcast, and I have to say, another fellow handsome bald male like myself.
Has incredible benefit to men and women, by the way, is going down. And we have to come up with an answer to that, right? So how do we address that? Do we address it medically, where we replace that hormone exogenously, meaning we give you that hormone directly, or do we try to fix the underlying problem? So if you want to do the latter, you have to know what the underlying problem is. Now, at the population level, the best answer as to why testosterone levels are declining, and unmistakably they are. So the data here are unambiguous. There's no debate on this fact.
There's a big difference between micro and macro, and population is by far macro, right? So that's all the entire population, the entire country, entire population of cities, states, countries, continents, whatever, right? So we're getting to the millions and beyond. So whole different view compared to just individuals, and small sample size, very much.
The debate is around the why. I believe that the best answer probably has to do with two things. One is increase in body weight and body fat specifically in men, and some combination of reduced quality of sleep and sort of disruption to sleep. So why are those two things relevant? So
for sure. If you're not aware, America has the highest obesity rates in the world, if I'm not mistaken, last time I checked. But it was really high, somewhere in the 60% range of obese. And I think we all are well aware that fast food, McDonald's, processed foods is very highly consumed, and not only that, marketed, right? So of course, especially low income, middle income earners are gonna go for that easy, quick, high caloric meals. So yeah, that's gonna lead to a decline of testosterone, which is an important hormone for all function, but specifically for males. I'll let Doctor talk about it more, and especially when your diet isn't right, if it's not on point, it's gonna suffer for sure.
when you increase body fat, two things are happening. One is you're increasing inflammation, and you are reducing the amount of testosterone that gets to stay in the form of testosterone, because part of the testosterone gets converted into estrogen. So with body fat comes more of this process called aromatization, or converting testosterone into estrogen. So if you think about what those two things are doing, if you have more inflammation, that reduces your ability to make testosterone, and you have more capacity to turn the less testosterone you make into estrogen. The net result of that is both of those things are reducing your total pool of testosterone. Mm-hmm. If you couple that with less, lower quality sleep, and I'm not talking about over the last 3 years, I'm comparing
I think it's safe to say a lot of us are not sleeping as much as we should. What do they say? The optimal amount of sleep is 8, but I highly doubt majority of people are getting a full 8 hours of sleep, of uninterrupted sleep, on a regular basis. I highly doubt that, especially when you factor in families, children, long hours at work, traffic hours, commuting. You know what I'm saying? And working out time, whatever. So getting the enough amount of sleep is very unlikely for a lot of people, especially working people. I myself strive for 6.5 or 7 a day. Now that's not always feasible, but for me that's like a pretty optimal number. But yeah, a lot of people, especially when you stay up late watching Netflix or scrolling on your phone, which yeah, I'm guilty of, but I do my best to manage it. Yeah, that's going to lead to all those health problems you mentioned as well.
Now to say 40 years ago. And what are all the reasons that people might have poorer quality of sleep now? I think there were many, but obviously phones and social media and just the stimulation of the world we live in probably plays a greater role in that. Sleep is when we make these hormones, right? So we make follicle stimulating hormones.
Remember, sleep is when we make these hormones. Testosterone is estrogen, and they're natural hormones that your body creates and is needed in both males and females, but obviously one more than the other, right? Depending on the gender. And so, yeah, sleep is super important. And the older you get, the more important it becomes. And I understand it's not feasible for everybody, especially people who work overnight or like 50, 60, 80 hours a week. I get it. And sometimes you have to sacrifice for the greater good, for family, for occupation, whatever it is. But yeah, this is how important sleep is.
Hormone and luteinizing hormone at their maximum amount during sleep, and those are the hormones that are driving the production of testosterone. So what we've seen in many of our patients when they have low testosterone, because there's a test you can do to see if their testosterone is low because their body can't make it or because their brain isn't receiving enough of a signal to make it. This is a very easy thing to determine medically. Unfortunately, most people aren't subjected to that level of testing because they go to these testosterone shops on street corners that are just giving everybody testosterone. But if a physician is curious enough to understand that, you can give a patient a drug or a hormone called HCG. HCG is luteinizing hormone, which is one of the hormones made by the brain. So if you come in and you see a man who's got very low testosterone, and you can't understand why, you give him luteinizing hormone. If he still has low testosterone,
FYI, there is no medicine on earth that's going to compare to an actual healthy lifestyle of eating correctly, proper diet, nutrition, sleeping enough, getting enough adequate sleep, exercising often, and including lifting weights, by the way. Yes, you can't avoid that. So there is no medicine on earth that's going to compare to actually living a healthy lifestyle. Okay. That's why lifestyle is the best healthcare imaginable. However, we live in a quick fix kind of a culture and society. And so, yes, in many circumstances, you're making huge lifestyle changes isn't feasible for some extreme cases like he's going to talk about. So, yeah, at that point, you're going to have to go to science for your answers. You know what I'm saying? And that could be in the form of a hormone or a pill.
you know that he has what's called primary hypogonadism, which means his testosterone is low because his testes can't make testosterone. Conversely, if you give the man luteinizing hormone and all of a sudden his testosterone goes up, he has secondary hypogonadism. Or, I mean, you could mix the primary, secondary there, but really the terminology doesn't mean anything. What matters is he can make testosterone, but for some reason, his brain isn't giving his body the signal to do it. And that's a classic finding in a person who's under high stress and or not sleeping well. So that's a long-winded answer to your question, but I think that those are probably the greatest contributors to this. Now, people have talked a lot about what about microplastics, what about other environmental factors, what about other factors in nutrition beyond just the ones that would contribute to excess body.
Another great medical podcaster is Dr. Rhonda Patrick. I think it's called Found My Fitness on YouTube. Amazing. And she deep dives into things like microplastics and like calcium, magnesium, that more than anyone I've ever heard of. And I've learned, I think, way more about those topics from her. So FYI.
Fat. The evidence there is less compelling, but I don't think we should discount it. But I think that if those things are playing a role, it is probably much smaller than what we just talked about.
I was thinking as you were speaking about sleep and testosterone, about how, and also the link there with bad diets, how if I've not slept well, I wake up and make worse food choices.
For sure.
And
for sure, 100%. Just this past few days, I didn't sleep enough. I went to bed too late, and there was a late game and everything. And the next day, underslept, and I wouldn't make the same food choices. My body's craving like sweets and easy stuff like that. So they're gonna touch on that, but this is like very natural for sure.
it's like, is that like dopamine dysfunction? Like, what's
No, it's
causing that?
probably more due to insulin signaling. So we know from really good experimental studies that when you sleep deprive people, they become insulin resistant. And the more insulin resistant a person is, the less they're able to access their stored energy. So higher insulin resistance means greater difficulty accessing stored energy. So if you wake up and you have successive days of poor sleep and you're becoming somewhat insulin resistant, you're gonna want to eat more because you're not able to access your own natural stores of fat, which is where we want to go for energy. So if you look at one experiment that was done out of the University of Chicago, they took healthy subjects, young subjects, and sleep deprived them for somewhere between 10 and 14 days. So not a huge period of time. And they only let them sleep 4 hours a night.
Damn.
Which, by the way, I know a lot of people who are doing that for years at a time.
Bro, no, you cannot survive on 4 hours of sleep a night. Hell no. Okay. Trust you're gonna suffer on the front end or the back end. Okay. Is it possible? Yes. Should you do that? No. Unless you like absolutely cannot live without doing that. Okay. I'll give you an example. During the month of Ramadan, for Muslims, they have to wake up super early before sunrise, a couple hours before at least, so that they can get a proper meal in and finish their prayer before the sun even comes up and they begin their fasting. Your sleep, you become sleep deprived because your entire sleep cycle is a bit off because of the timing, but obviously it's for a greater purpose and so forth religiously. And so you also are fasting, so therefore that means no caffeine or anything during the day. So that means what you would take chemically to help you stay awake is gone as well, on top of your sleep cycle being flipped on its head and reduced sleeping. So yeah, you do struggle with staying awake and sleeplessness in that month, but obviously it's for a greater purpose, religious speaking, and higher cause, which Muslims around the world is the reason they do that. But that's a very life example of this 4 hours of sleep. But no, I don't recommend that to anybody. Okay, young or old, no way. There are some people who actually have sleep apnea. Okay, I'm not talking about the extreme examples or people who just can't sleep or insomnia, whatever it is. Right? They actually just can't sleep. Not talking about that. Those are subjective cases and so forth. But on a whole, 4 hours is just asking for trouble. Okay, your cognition won't be as sharp. Okay, you're gonna be fuzzy. Your health will decline. But yeah, I'll let him go into that more.
In that 10 to 14 day period of time, their insulin resistance was worsened by 50%. This is, in other words, they do an experiment called a euglycemic clamp where they inject them with glucose to see how effectively they can put glucose into their cells, which is that's the hallmark of insulin sensitivity, is how well you can put glucose into your muscles when it's infused in you. And their capacity to do that was reduced by 50% after such a short intervention. So I think sleep restriction and unhealthy sleep is a very underappreciated cause of metabolic health and weight gain. And then by extension, these other things we're talking about.
It seems to me to be the thing furthest upstream in my life that then causes this cascading effect to how I show up in sort of cognitive performance, how well I can articulate myself. If I go to the gym, how hard my workout is. If I choose healthy options versus unhealthy options. So it feels like
and mood in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Yeah.
I've said this before, and I'm not the first to say this, so I'm paraphrasing others, but if you really stop to think about it, sleep doesn't make a lot of sense from an evolutionary perspective. Like if you go back in time a few 100,000 years, why would we have spent a third of our life unconscious? It didn't serve our purpose. You can't mate, you can't hunt, and you can't defend yourself. So you have to believe that if we could have evolved out of it, we would have done it. And we didn't.
Ooh.
So that
Evolutionary psychology, by the way, amazing topic. If anyone is interested to learn more, once you start going down that rabbit hole, you start seeing the code of the matrix, and you realize that a lot of our behaviors, whether it's conscious or not, it can be explained actually through evolution and stuff and evolutionary psychology. But yeah, he's correct. It makes perfect sense. From just evolutionary standpoint, 100,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers, there was no history. There was no civilization. It was just survive. Okay, it was just small tribes, survival of the fittest, and your lifespans of 40 years or less. It's crazy, right? It's a totally different world. And so, if evolution, if not sleeping served a purpose, evolutionarily speaking, we would not need to sleep at all. We would just keep being 24/7 junkies and like working or creating energy or whatever it is. So yeah, I totally agree.
means that whatever it's doing, it must be really important. I mean, core, essential to our existence. While I will completely acknowledge that different people have a different necessity or requirement for how much they sleep, I still think that many people underestimate how much they need.
You know, you asked me at the start, you said, what are the things that you want to do when you reach your marginal decade? And I gave you my answer. What's your answer to that, now that you're a father and you're in a different season of life?
Well, they're very similar to the types of things you're thinking about, and I love how you've got specific examples. So I really like playing with my kids, right? So I can imagine that in my marginal decade, I'll have grandkids that are the age of my kids,
Yeah.
right? And you know, maybe a bit older, but as I'm even getting towards that marginal decade.
Yep, in that area, in that little gray area, I am where I'm in between this, where I'm fully ready to be a father and a partner and a spouse, but not there yet. And parents are going crazy, as you can imagine, because when you're especially grew up in a culture where like you're expected to be married and have children by a certain age and so forth, because that's the society standard. You're only going to be disappointed and upset when it doesn't happen, and especially the later it gets. So yeah, that's my life right now.
Okay, so playing sports is really, really fun. I really like playing, especially because when I grew up, like I played hockey because I grew up in Canada. And then I immediately went into kind of boxing and martial arts, and those became my life. So now playing sports that I didn't play much as a kid is really fun. Like I'm really enjoying baseball. I'm really enjoying soccer. And so when you play these things, you realize this is not an easy thing to do when you get old. Like to sit in the,
Hell no.
to sit in the goal and actually.
Everything gets harder as you get older. Every single thing. I used to play a lot of basketball, hours and hours of it, maybe hundreds of hours in my teenage years for sure. I thought I could be like way better than I actually was, but it's all good. Like you have to go through that. And yeah, today if I were to go back in the court, I'd get schooled by younger players, and also I'd have a lot of more pain as a reaction to that. But that's life, man. The clock moves forward. There's no stopping it. If it wasn't meant to be, it would have been. You know what I mean?
Like stop a ball when a kid is blasting at you full stop. You have to be able to move around. So again, like I would love to be able to play soccer, throw a football, throw and hit a baseball as long as possible. You can get into movements that are much simpler, but if I can do all of those things, I'm in great shape. Now, of course, to be able to do that, I also need to be able to do a lot of things that many people also can't do in their marginal decade, like sit on the floor, get up off the floor under their own power, walk up X number of flights of stairs, having the strength to do that.
Oh my God, I can't even explain how important it is to be able to move up a flight of stairs. You know what I mean? Multiple flights of stairs. And when you work in corporate, you're gonna see folks in their 40s, 50s, and up, and a lot of them have gained a lot of weight, and it becomes harder on their body to move at all, and much less on a flight of stairs. And especially when you're getting to your upper, like you're past your mid-age, like 60s and up, that's close to retirement or whatever. It's really rough out there. So health is wealth. Take your health very seriously, and being able to be active with your children or teenagers is, as a 40 plus year old, is an amazing blessing, and I think everyone should strive for that.
I want to be able to pull a bow back. Obviously not at the same poundage as the current bow that I pull back, but I would still like to be able to pull a 50-pound bow back in the final decade of my life.
And when you think about all those things you want to accomplish,
archery is fun. It's been a while since I've tried archery. I've done it, but I gotta say that's a dedication of a form, and you learn a lot about yourself, and you also feel connected to, like, historically speaking, like that's how hunting was for millennia.
if we were then to sort of codify them into a bunch of exercises or areas of your health that you had to now be thinking about, that I needed to be thinking about, what are the most important things? So I'm a 32-year-old. What are the most important parts of?
Man, he's a kid, 32-year-old, millions of followers. Nah, never compare your worst to someone's best, for sure.
My health that I should be thinking about if I want to achieve all the things that I said to you in my final decade.
No one in the final decade of their life ever said, I wish I had less strength, and I wish I had less endurance. So you cannot be too strong and you cannot be too fit.
Facts.
The only time that one would throttle back on the pursuit of those is A, if doing so is coming at the expense of something else, either with respect to your health or your life, and two, if the
A and 2. He meant A and B, or 1 and 2. Same difference.
pursuit of that at such an extreme level produces risk of injury.
Okay.
So, in other words, could I be stronger than I am today? Yes.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. We know that in resistance training, the sweet spot for pure strength is 1 to 5 reps.
Dang, that's a hell of a pause. 1 to 5 reps of pure strength. I'm sure he's talking about maxing out. I don't know if he means like lower weights or whatever, but yeah, and that's a guy thing. Guys like to measure their strength on the bench press primarily, and how many reps you can do a max on the bench press. Now, there's a lot of discussion about that, whether that's even a good, decent exercise or whether bar versus which I actually do dumbbells. I do free weight dumbbell presses, free weight bench presses, and so forth. And I don't try to max. I just try to be consistent, and I try to grow my weight. But yeah, that's if you're talking about just max pure strength, yeah, that's a good point.
When your goal is to maximize strength, you need to be pushing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reps. Once you start thinking about hypertrophy, muscle size, we're starting to think about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 reps. Once we start thinking about muscular endurance, we start thinking about north of 15, right? Those are the general patterns of resistance training.
So if I want to build my
That's a good point. I aim for like 8, 12 reps, and they're not at the highest weights. I can probably push myself more, and I need to increase the weight, in fact, because I kind of just be more consistent with that. But yeah, if your goal is just pure muscle strength building 100% and that's it, then yeah, you're gonna have to like find the heaviest weight you possibly can and try to rep that once or twice. You know what I'm saying? But I do not recommend that. If you're a beginner, consult your training expert, your trainer, local trainer, and fitness experts and so forth. But if you're a seasoned veteran and you've been lifting for years, then yeah, I'm sure your goals are different. But for me, I don't look to max out myself. I just try to be consistent.
muscles because I'm going for aesthetic goals, then I need to be aiming above 5 reps. I need to be 10 or 12.
Yeah.
If I'm just purely thinking about strength, bigger weights but lower reps.
That's exactly right.
Okay. And then if I want muscular endurance, which
Got
is
to be even higher reps.
okay,
Yeah.
lower weight.
Yep.
Okay.
That man is in amazing shape for his age. No homo. I think he's in his 50s now, but like he looks awesome in his shape. Like muscular tone, right? Skin, build, all those things looks really good. And he's in his, I think, 50s. So I strive. I think everyone should strive to be in this kind of shape in their 50s, hopefully.
So again, we could go into much more detail around that, but just to finish the point here, why do I not do much training at 1 to 5 reps? In fact, these days, I don't do any training at 1 to 5 reps anymore.
Why?
Because to train at 1 to 5 reps comes at a risk,
Okay.
especially for heavy compound movements.
Exactly. And that risk, it's a risk reward ratio. It's not worth the risk might be too high of injury to just max out, especially if you're not doing it in a controlled environment with an expert, with a trainer, with someone like that, assisting you. And if you're by yourself, like myself, working by yourself in your home and with your own weights, you can't just push it all the way without anyone else there. So the risk is too high. I agree.
So like, I'm okay getting a little bit less of a strength benefit while still, of course, getting stronger, but training at a higher rep load. So I'm targeting 8 to 12 reps with 1 to 2 reps in reserve is basically how I'm doing my resistance training. That means every set I'm doing, I would expect to get to within about 1 rep of failure somewhere. So today when I lifted, I don't think I did less than 7. I didn't do more than 12. And the weight was always titrated so that I was either failing, almost failing, or 1 rep away from failing, somewhere in there. And
I did a little lifting today as well. Arms and back, not the heaviest weight, but pretty sizable amount to get to failure at least.
adjusting the weight constantly on every exercise to get there, with the exception of 1 exercise. I did push-ups was one of the things I did. Push-ups are kind of more in the muscle endurance. Obviously, I'm doing more reps
Love push-ups, 100 to 200 every single day, for sure.
when I was doing push-ups. But pretty much everything else was in that range. So again, I'm not fully maximizing strength anymore because the cost of it might be a little bit high in terms of injury risk. Similarly, I'm not strength training 24/7 because I need to make time to do my endurance training and other types of training.
How often do you train resistance training?
I resistance train 3 times a week.
And how often do you train generally? And
I train every day
every day?
Yeah.
Why?
because, again,
Same. I think some activity on a daily basis is way better than a lot of activity on a semi-frequent basis. I honestly believe like if you just do 30 minutes of walking and 50 push-ups every single day, they say the consistency wins, right? And like Bruce Lee said it in this way that whoever he fears the person has done one kick 10,000 times, right? So yeah, consistency always wins. Consistency beats intensity. Okay, the most intense guys are not going to beat the most consistent guys, and I can do more push-ups than the vast majority of people my age. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that because that's just a result of consistency and focus. And yeah, doing that bare minimum, you're going to be ahead of most people probably within your age group. So minimal plyometric exercise and 30 minutes walking is good enough, I would say, for most people.
The intensity of my training is not that high, at least 3 days a week. So the 3 resistance days are pretty hard because I'm really only doing each body part once a week. So when I'm doing it, I'm
push, pull, legs. That's the only resistance. That's the resistance workout training routine that I follow, and I think it's adequate for most.
really, I'll spend that 90 minutes really kind of hammering those body parts. 3 of those days are just zone 2. So my three of my 4 cardio days are zone 2 days where I'm doing, I'm on a bike and I am riding at a level of intensity that actually allows me to still talk. Not talk like I am now, but talking in a sort of a strained way. So for me, that's about a heart rate of 140 beats per minute. And that's just not taking a huge toll on me. Like that, those are almost like recovery days for me. And then 1 day a week, I do a really, really hard VO2 max day. And that's a really hard day. That burns a lot of matches. That's tomorrow. Not looking forward to it already.
Do you do cardio on your resistance training days as well?
No, I don't. So it's the 7 day. It's 4 days of cardio, 3 days of resistance. Now that's going to change in the summer when I'm going to add 3 days of swimming, and I will end up doing some swims on some resistance days.
Swimming is like probably the best cardio exercise. It's my favorite one, I would have to say, in the summer. And when you have access to a pool, it's one of the best things, I would say, and doing some laps. We're about to end this. I'll let him finish this segment. But I'd say small activity every day is good. When he says he doesn't do cardio, what he means is he doesn't do full cardio sessions, okay? He like 30-minute, 1 hour jogs or sprints. He's not doing that is what he means. If you have a dog, you are walking your dog every day, or you know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to walk at minimum once, if not twice. Yeah, you could probably get away with letting your dog just go out in the backyard, right? But you still have to clean up after them. As a dog owner, I walk my dog 2 to 3 times every single day. I get a lot of steps. I aim for like 9,000, 10,000 steps a day, including walking around in the office. And that's just basic steps. That's not like a huge cardio session. So that's just basic walking, right? And that's manageable, I think, by almost everyone, And real cardio, like fully committed jogging, running, whatever. Yeah, I don't do that as much, especially in the season, in the summer season. And that's what he's referring to. But I'm pretty sure he still walks like every day, 30 minutes, just to like maybe clear his head or just get some steps in. So he probably doesn't consider walks as cardio, but I think you're still doing some kind of cardio, in my opinion.
So before you do your resistance workout, you don't go on the stepper for 20 minutes or cycle for 20 minutes or something?
I don't.
Is there a particular reason why?
It wouldn't really serve a purpose. I know a lot of people do that. I know a lot of people will say, hey, I'm going to do a little bit of a warm up on the treadmill or the Stepmaster before I lift.
Yeah,
but
I
I actually
too.
have a pretty strong point of view on how we should warm up to lift. And
I also, when I used to pay for gym membership, I also would warm up at something like that, Stairmaster or a treadmill. I think it's because that's what I heard was good for you. And then I would do a real training exercise. But I've heard everything. I've heard do your cardio before, do your cardio after, just do slight warm up, do heavy cardio. It's all over the place. So there's no like one way. It's just depending on who you ask.
don't think walking on the treadmill or running on the treadmill or being on the Stairmaster or on the bike is a great prep for the lift. I think it's better to warm up for a lift doing movements that prepare you to lift. So for example, like if it's a leg day, So Monday's leg day, right? So what am I going to do? I'm going to start by doing a bunch of core stabilizing stuff. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of this dynamic neuromuscular stabilization stuff. So you get into basically these baby positions and you really learn to activate your core as you move around in a 6-month position and stuff like that.
Also, you can do body weight squats and body weight lunges in your house for just a few minutes. No big deal. Great warm up. Honestly, it's going to get the muscles burning. And I think it's a great warm up on leg day. And it's also a great short exercise when it's not leg day as well. Just body weight squats and body weight lunges. No big deal.
I then do a whole bunch of, like, you know what a 90-90 is, or a shin box exercise is, where you're kind of on the ground in a position where you're really, you can start out doing it isometrically, but ultimately going through a slow eccentric and concentric phase of movement that's kind of activating glutes. So I go through basically a whole DNS sequence. Then I get into a dynamic movement prep. So then I get into a bunch of bouncing, a bunch of footwork, and then I start with really light weights. So I'll go to a leg extension machine and do very, very light leg extensions, very, very light leg curls, come back and do more jumping and moving and lunging and go back and forth. So I'll spend 20 minutes doing a warm-up, but the warm-up is geared for me to lift. Whereas if I had just sat on a bike and pedaled around, that doesn't actually replicate any of the movements I'm going to do when I start loading myself.
Yeah, we're going to end it here. There's a lot of different philosophies when it comes to exercise, okay? The best thing is just to begin, just to do something, okay? You're going to figure it out as you go along. If you're brand new to just completely brand new to exercising and working out, but honestly, at the very minimal, just doing anything is a million times better than doing nothing, okay, on a daily basis. You don't need expensive gyms. You don't need expensive gym memberships, okay? You don't need to do saunas and cold plunges and everything all the time. You don't need to spend $200 a month like some people do on your gym just because you have the fanciest equipment. All of that is trumped by simply doing basic stuff on a day-to-day basis every single day, 365 days of doing push-ups, air squats, walking. You will be miles ahead of those who are just focused on the top notch of lifting and equipment and all those things. So yeah, health is wealth. Okay. He mentioned all the things about our hormonal health, testosterone, estrogen, etc., and how that relates to your health and fitness. So taking your health and fitness is very important, and taking control of that is important if you want to not just getting like a six-pack or aesthetic goals, but actually living a long, healthy life. Okay, living a long, healthy life, that means taking health decisions and taking your health as a priority. Okay, so yeah, with that, signing off here. If you like this episode, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe for more. And again, this is Mosh, and as always, remember, it is just a little perspective.